and welcome to Book Lust. I'm your host, Nancy Pearl. My guest today is longtime Seattle Times arts reviewer, Moira Macdonald, and we're going to be talking about her new book, her first novel, Storybook Ending. Moira, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Nancy. I'm thrilled to be here talking to you.
Tell me, what was the impetus for this novel?
I have been a writer for a very long time, but I have never written fiction. I have been at the Seattle Times. It'll be 24 years this summer, so a very long time. I have long thought I'd like to write a novel, and like all those things that you think about, you may know something about this yourself, Nancy, that, time goes by and you think I'd like to do this, and I just kind of didn't get around to it, and the years went by. And then, the pandemic happened, a few things happened in my life. My dad died, and he'd always wanted me to do that. And I was reaching a milestone birthday, and I thought, if I don't try this now, I will never try it. And so I just kind of had an idea, and I took a leave from my job, an unpaid leave, which was very not very smart of me at the time, but I did it anyway.
Very brave, very brave.
I had no idea how things would turn out, but I thought, what, let's just try this and see what happens. So I just kind of jumped in. And this was spring of 22. So a little over 3 years ago was when I started.
Wow, that's fast in the world of writing fiction, I think.
Well, I'm a journalist, so I write fast. So I pretty much wrote the whole thing in about 5 months, the first draft. And then there were quite a few subsequent drafts that came along. And then it sold in September of 23. So it sold about a year and a half after I started. So yeah, it did seem to go quite fast.
When you said you had an idea for the book, was it the characters who came to you, or was it the setting? Because I know you base the book, the setting of the book, on one of your favorite bookstores, Third Place Ravenna, here in Seattle. So, or was it the story? Do you know what I mean? A plot.
Yeah, what it was is that actually, I've been trying to pinpoint when this happens. I can't remember. But years ago, I started saving things I was finding in books. Because, if you buy used books, if you use the library, things turn up. And I just started finding just the oddest things, like little handwritten bits of poetry and an anniversary card that had a love note and a hand-painted bookmark and just all these things. I started saving them a while ago. I didn't know what I was going to do with them, but I saved them. And one day I was at Ravenna Third Place, my bookstore down the street, which I love very much. And there was a guy behind the desk where they sort the used books. And I just kind of thought, so if you wanted to leave something for him, you could leave it in a book and he'd find it, like those things that I was finding. And I thought, so what if someone kind of left him a note because she wanted to get to know him better? And then the wrong person got the note because the wrong person picked up the book. And I thought, okay, that's a rom-com. And that's a rom-com. I think I would like to find out how it ended. So that's kind of how it began, both the bookstore setting and just this whole idea of, I was thinking, books are these things that, we leave our emotions in books, we leave our hearts in books, but we can also leave stuff in books. We can leave a physical object. And I thought, I like the idea of a book being a conduit for a relationship.
When you're reading, do you find that what you're most drawn to then are the characters or the plot of a book? What do you look for?
Oh gosh, that's such a good question. I mean, I think it depends on the kind of thing I'm reading. If I'm reading, say, a mystery, I'm probably most intrigued by the plot and exactly what happens and how it's unfolding. Right. If I'm reading a piece of literary fiction, I'm probably more interested in the writing and the style of it and the language. I think it just depends, all of those things.
When you were writing this, it's told really from the perspective of three different people, and the bookstore owner, who's very, very interesting. What I was struck by when I read the book was how you have included everything that you love and are knowledgeable about in the book. And I'm talking about things like there's lots of shout outs to different books, for example, and movies. And so, if you're someone who has read you in the Seattle Times for all these years and is familiar with the different programs events that you cover, you could really find your loves in here. And
Well, it's a first book, and you always hear that someone's first novel is just who they are, and
right,
so much. A friend of mine read this and just said, "Moira, this book is you,"
right.
and so I really hope people like it because I guess it's me.
Y-
But yeah,
yes,
the things I
yeah.
love are in there because I was kind of looking for a book. This book was born out of about during the pandemic and some hard stuff, and I was looking for a book that would make me smile. I was looking for something
Hmm.
that would make me happy during a hard time, and I kept looking for that kind of book that would not be predictable, but would be just entertaining and funny and leave me feeling happy and yet satisfied in a way that not all books do. And I couldn't find that book. And
Right.
so this is the story I'm always telling. But again, it always comes back to Revenge at Third Place. But I was there. This must have been 3-4 years ago before all this began. But they had and I was looking for that book. I didn't find it. But they had that sign up on the wall. There's that famous Toni Morrison quote: "If you cannot find the book you want, then you must write it." And I have to say, I read it that day. I was like, "Okay, Toni. Okay, I guess I need to do this." But yeah,
Right.
a lot of me is in here because that's what I know.
I thought it was wonderful. I just, yeah, yeah. I, I think that, I don't know if your reading specifically changed after, I feel like my reading changed after 2016 a lot, and what I wanted for all these years in between, and still are books that will not make me depressed.
Yes, yeah, that
And
is what I have been looking for as well. There's so much dystopia out there, and a lot of those books are wonderful, and I'm in awe of how they're written, but it's not what I want to read.
right. Tell me how your experience as a book reviewer helped or hindered when you were working on Storybook Ending.
Oh, I don't know. I think certainly my experience as a journalist helped me enormously because what my job is making sentences. So I think that's why I was able to write the book pretty quickly because just putting words together on deadline is something I know how to do. And in some ways, it's much easier when you can just make everything up. When you're a journalist, you really have to
Right.
check everything and make sure that what you're saying is entirely accurate. Oh, wow, I'm creating a world here. I can just do this myself. So I think that helped me a great deal. As far as being a book critic, um, I don't know, just again, a real love for language and hoping, I don't know, in some ways, I think it made it harder because there was so much to aspire to. There were many days when I thought, Myra, what are you thinking? You cannot write a book that is anywhere near as good as the ones that have thrilled you all these years. And
Right.
but every now and then, it's a quote. I think it's Ian McEwan. I read in a profile of him in the New Yorker years ago. He was talking about writing and how hard it is, but how he said that every now and then you get 6 words that just fall in the right order, and it's all worth it. I thought every now and then in this book, there's 6 words that fall in the right order, and that felt really good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm not sure being a book critic was helpful or just made the whole thing more intimidating.
One of the ways I found it helpful for me, and that's why I asked the question, because I wondered if you felt this way, is that it made me understand that some people would like my book and some people wouldn't, and it had nothing really to do with the book itself.
Yes, and I did think about that a lot, and that is very helpful to know that it is not possible to write a book that everyone will like. And
Right.
all you can
Yeah.
do is write the book that is in you and the book that you have and hope that some people like it. But yeah,
Right.
some people are going to hate this book, and God bless. I hope they find something else they like.
I don't think anyone will hate it, Moira. Honestly, I can't see that. Um, on the cover, or I guess it's described as a comedy of manners in something that I read, rather than a rom-com. Do you see a difference between those two things?
I keep calling it a comedy of manners / rom-com because it is kind of both, and I can't.
Mm-hmm.
And those genres overlap, but I think you can have a comedy of manners that is not a rom-com, and vice versa. And my
Right.
book, I don't want to give anything away about my book, but it's not really even a rom-com. It
Right.
doesn't necessarily follow the pattern that you would expect. But I think
Yes.
it does very much have a tone of a rom com. People keep bringing up Nora Ephron, the Nora Ephron's movies. make them think of this book. And that is definitely a tone that I was going for.
Mm-hmm. Were those three main characters there from the start?
No, they were not. Um, really, the whole thing began with a note in a book, and I had to think about, okay, who wrote this note, and who found this note? And so I have these three main characters who came to me, and April, who is the one who wrote the note. She might be kind of inspired by some of my younger colleagues, because during the pandemic, I was thinking a lot about what must it be like if you were a single young person and you are stuck at home, working from home, working remotely, you're not getting out, you're not communicating with people. What must that be like? And I was kind of worried about them. I thought, this seems really tough. And I thought, okay, I can see somebody, a young woman who is of an age, she's 33. Her friends are kind of starting to get married and have kids and get together and do all that. And she's still kind of on her own and kind of lonely. And she decides to make a bold gesture because she's feeling so stuck. And I thought, okay, I can see that. And I thought, okay, who's she going to make this gesture toward? And I thought, okay, it's going to be a man at the bookstore. And I was thinking, okay, what would it be like to be a very, very good looking person who has no confidence? I thought we're so used to rom-coms in which there's this handsome devil at the middle of it who just knows exactly, who he is and what he's doing. And I thought, okay, what if this is a man in his mid-30s who's kind of been floating a little bit in his life? He's very good looking. He's kind of been able to skate through a lot of things in life because he's good looking and he's very sweet, but he's not at all sure of himself. And he doesn't know what to say all the time. And he doesn't know kind of where he fits in the world. And he's just kind of struggling. And so he's sort of sitting at the desk at this bookstore having a little existential crisis. And he has no idea this woman's left him a note because he's never noticed her. And then I thought, okay, so who does get the note? And the woman who gets the note is a young widow. Her husband died about 5 years ago. So she is someone who has known a terrible tragedy. And that's something that I've thought about in life as well. And I thought it's an interesting place to be, not at the moment of the tragedy, which is just awful, but 5 years later, when she still isn't quite able to move on, but she's really close. She is right there on the edge of maybe this is the moment, maybe I'm feeling strong enough, maybe I can try again. I knew love before, maybe I can find it again. But she's got a little girl, she's got a busy life, and one day she finds this note. And this completely throws her life into a bit of turmoil that, oh my gosh, someone's noticing me, what do I do? And so the three of them just kind of came out of different things that I've been thinking about. And I wanted them to be three quite different people, but people who you could kind of see getting along, and people who intersect at this bookstore, because to me, all of life intersects at bookstores.
Or a library. Right. What was the hardest part for you about writing this?
Oh gosh, everything. No. I recently learned some really great terminology, that there are two kinds of fiction writers, that there are plotters and there are pantsers. And pantsers are the ones who do it by the seat of their pants. And I am definitely a pantser. I have never outlined anything in my life, and I didn't outline this book. And I just started writing it to see what would happen. And the hardest part, I think, I got about maybe halfway to 2/3 of the way through, and I got stuck. I just got completely stuck. I thought, oh no, I don't know should I start over? What is going on? And I found a bit of advice somewhere. I picked up a book at the library about, how to write a novel. And one bit of advice it had, if you're stuck, jump ahead. And so I jumped ahead and I wrote the last chapter. So even though I didn't outline it, I thought, okay, where do I want these people to end up? And so that kind of saved me, I think. I wrote the final chapter. Okay, this is where they need to get. I don't know how to get there, but now I have an endpoint. Now I will figure out how to get these three people intersected and get them to that place. So that was probably the hardest. And gosh, a lot of it was hard. It's just hard. You know how it is. Writing is hard.
Yeah. It's hard to force yourself to.
Yeah. Reading is joyful and easy and wonderful. Writing is hard.
Yeah, right. Yes. Yeah. So when you were writing the book, were you reading as widely and as I know you weren't reading for work because you were on a leave, so you were doing pleasure reading or whatever what you want to call it. But did it change? I mean, I know there are writers who, if they're working on a novel, don't read fiction because they're afraid the voice of the novel they're reading, the fiction they're reading, will seep into theirs. Did you have that worry?
Not so much, but I did mostly focus on. I remember at the time I was mostly reading mysteries. I thought, I think I'm going to read books that are a completely different genre than what I'm doing, and that ended up making its way into the book because April reads a lot of mysteries, and so that kind of got in there a little bit. But I thought I think I'll feel more comfortable reading books that are nothing like what I'm trying to do here. And every now and then I would reread a favorite. I love to reread. You and I have talked about that.
Yes.
But yes, every now and then I would reread something that I've read many times. And I will confess, I think I did read Nora Ephron's Heartburn during this. I thought, okay, yeah, this is kind of the voice I'm kind of aiming for here, but with its own twist.
Yeah. I sort of imagined that you read The Ultimate Comedy of Manners, I think, Pride and Prejudice.
You know what? I have not read that in many years. I have read it. It's been a very long time. I should have read it. But I didn't. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, so what do you read? What are you reading? I know you're not reviewing books anymore, which is sad, I think, for the book reading.
It is. I was sorry to hear that decision, but I understand it. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk about what you're reading. What are you reading? You're away from Seattle when we're taping this show. What did you bring with you to read?
Okay, what I did bring, despite my best efforts, I'm still getting sent galleys of things. And I worked so hard to cancel everybody, but every now and then one of them slips through. But one came the other day that I really wanted to read, and it's Janice Hallett's latest. Have you read her books at all? They're so interesting. They're made up of emails and texts and just little bits of ephemera like that, and they're just fascinating. And she's got a new one out about something terrible that happens at a pub quiz. So it's very, very enjoyable. I read most of that on the plane just the other day. What else? I picked up, well, the book that I'm sitting right here is my book.
And I have it too, right here.
You've got the nice hardcover. It's so pretty. I love this book.
I love the cover.
I'm actually reading quite an awful book right now, so I'm not going to name the author because I don't want to do that to somebody. But it was a book that I picked up in a bookstore the other day because it said international bestseller, and it looked like it would be. It's a thriller. It looked like it'd be a lot of fun, and not so much. Yeah.
Yes. So writing negative reviews must have been, well, of any, theater or music, whatever. Because when I was reviewing books, I never wanted to give a book a negative review because there are so many books that you could recommend. Why? Yeah.
I never did give a negative book review because there were so many books out there. And so for long as if I got a third of the way into something, I thought, oh dear, I don't like this at all, I would just go read something else and review something else. So I don't think I wrote a single negative book review. I generally don't think so. I do write negative movie reviews because those come along fairly often. And when you go to a screening, you're obligated to write a review, whether you like it or not. So, and those are difficult. So you just have to, I try to really focus on just being as fair as I can. And remembering that when you're a critic, you're primarily writing not to help out the filmmakers, but to help your readers figure out what to go see. And something that I didn't like might be something they would like very much. So I need to really give a full picture of what it might be, and not just that, I think this is bad. Give much more of a sense of what the journey of it is.
Yeah, and there's a sense with book reviews that you want the book that's written to be reviewed and not the book that the reviewer hoped that the book would be, which is sometimes a distinction that many reviewers don't seem to make these days. So do you think that, one of the things that you still have in the Seattle Times is your interest in fashion? And how did that fit in to Storybook Ending?
Oh, well, I gave Laura, who is the third character, the widow, the young mother, the job I've always wanted to have, which is that she works at a department store. And she is the one who, if you come in and you don't know what you want and you need an outfit for an event, then she will help you put that together. And that's something I will say, I've done that for my friends quite often. And I love doing that. and I've never done it professionally, but I've thought a lot about that. That would be a career I would really love. So I thought I'm going to give this to one of my characters. And
Yes, see, that was, yes, when I read what Laura did, and then, her job is like a personal shopper, I thought, I said, oh, God, that's so wonderful that Moira managed to put everything, everything that she does at the Seattle Times in this one lovely, lovely novel. When you were you a big, I'm assuming you were a big reader when you were a kid. Are there still books that you remember from those days?
oh gosh, yes. There are books from my childhood that I still reread all the time. Like Anne of Green Gables and all of those books, which made such an impression on me. Little Women, I probably reread it every year or so. And every year I find something new in it. And I think I was very young when I first read it. I remember skipping a lot of it because I didn't understand it. That's how young I was.
Yeah.
Um, gosh, those are probably it's not popping into my head, and of course I'm losing it now. But yeah, those two, and yeah, I read obsessively when I was a kid. I read the same stuff over and over. It kind of seemed like some of the time.
Do you think now that you want to do another novel?
I do, and I'm well into it actually.
Wow. Okay. Can you talk about it, or would you rather not?
I will give only this is my very, very vague elevator pitch that I'm giving, which is that my second book is also a comedy of manners / rom-com inspired by a conversation that I overheard in Tuscany.
I guess the message of that is that we should all pay more attention to what people are saying all around us because
Telling you this conversation, I will say I overheard it 15 years ago, and it's been on my mind that long because it was that interesting. And I thought a lot about the people having that conversation. I don't know who they were. I don't know their names. I don't know anything about them. But I thought a lot about them. And I have now kind of recreated them in this second book because I wanted to understand why they were having that conversation.
cool. Oh, very cool. I know we're all looking we're all looking forward to that one. Did you write Storybook Ending on the computer or in longhand?
Oh my God, I have the worst handwriting in the world because I spend my days taking notes in the dark at movies and I just scribble. My handwriting is awful. I couldn't, yeah, no, I wrote it on a laptop. I can't even read my own writing. And I certainly couldn't expect anybody else to. So yeah, no, it's thank goodness for computers.
When you were working on Storybook Ending, did you write that first draft straight through, or did you stop and correct as you were going along? The big.
I pretty much wrote it straight through. As I mentioned, I did have that pause in the middle where I jumped ahead.
Yes, right.
But I pretty much then went back, and because I was so tempted, it's such a temptation that you want to go back and fix things, but
Right.
you could tinker with it forever. And I thought this would be better to get one complete awful first draft done, and then I'll go back and start again. And the other bit of good advice that I read after I finished the first draft, which was a real mess, and it's basically what you read there, but there was a whole subplot I had to clean out because it didn't work at all, and there were just a lot of things that it got quite cleaned up. What I read was a smart thing to do is when you begin draft 2 is retype the whole thing, as opposed to going into your file that's already there and revising in the file. If you retype the whole thing, you are less likely to just keep things that don't work because they're already there. So I retyped the whole thing a second time, and I found that really sort of helpful and freeing. And there were huge sections. Okay, this is going. This doesn't work, and I'm just going to get rid of it. So that's advice I would give anybody.
And did you have somebody that you really wanted to read the book immediately? I mean, did you not write it for somebody, but we talk about like first readers, or who did the first pass on your book in your life, not an agent or something like that?
I was terrified to show it to anybody, so nobody saw it for a long time. And then I showed it to my husband. And I thought, okay, he's a really smart reader. But I thought, will he be able to tell me if it's awful? Because at that point, I thought it might be awful. But I emailed him the file. I said, read this when you have time and just tell me what you think. And he was downstairs. He has a studio downstairs. He's a musician. And he sort of disappeared for a while. Then he eventually came back upstairs and he sort of nodded. He said, I think you got something. I think you've got something. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
So he was the first reader. A few of my friends also read fairly early drafts. Not that many people read it. A few friends did. Really, yeah, a few friends read it and gave me a few bits of advice, not a whole lot. And I did a second draft. I think I did a third draft, and then I was really ready to give up. And then I found out about the writer to agent program at AWP, which and AWP was in Seattle in the spring of 23. And through that program, you can submit 5 pages, just your first 5 pages, and 1 paragraph describing who you are and 1 paragraph describing your book. And representatives from 5 literary agencies will take a look. And somebody told me about this, and I thought, oh my gosh, that sounds crazy. And I almost didn't do it because in order to do it, you have to register for the conference, and the conference was $300. And I said to my husband, I can't pay $300. He said, do it. So this is why the book is dedicated to him. So he said, do it. And I did. And 2 out of the 5 literary agencies wanted to meet with me. And the person I signed with told me there were over 1,000 submissions, and she picked 8, and mine was number 1 of the 8.
Wow.
Thought, oh my
That's
gosh.
great.
So that's how I found my agent, and that's how all this happened, just from 5 pages.
Well, Moira, our time is up, but I did want to thank you again for being on the show, and good luck with Storybook Ending, and good luck with the next book, which now I can't wait to read.
Oh, thank you so much, Nancy. I'm just, you can't imagine what an honor this is to be here. I have read and enjoyed your work for so long, and I'm just delighted to talk to you.
Ditto. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.